Happy Thursday. These lead chips are making me thirsty. Does anyone else taste metal? Did you see what I did there, Larry? That was actually no, I'm getting there. That was actually impressive that you just didn't appreciate, Steve, because I asked Twitter what our opening lines were going to be today, and the lines that I've got, I combined them all into one super opening.
Impressive.
Whatever, Steve. Happy 68th. Godless engineer.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here on my 68th time. 69 though, I've heard is the real fun one.
That's right.
You don't know
We've
what
got
happens.
something. We've got something special when you have your 69th appearance on this show.
You're not going to like it.
Yeah, we thank you for joining us. If you are on the heels of last night, it was a epic showdown. I think Dr. Jensen is not getting too much love in the comments today, but that combined with the after show where we had RN Ra and Trevor Valley and Apologia and Dr. Jensen actually stayed around for a little bit, and we had a surprise appearance by a guy named Christian who, surprisingly enough, has won the hearts and souls of most people in the comments. I was about that. They
was a nice
seem
guy.
to take a liking.
Nice
Yeah. You gotta give him privacy. But we have Godless Engineer with us for the first part of tonight's show. We're going to be doing the red herring of him today because he is somewhat of a expert in this field, I think, because it goes right along with what he likes to. I guess it's not a hobby, but it's. I mean, you like to discuss the mysticism thing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this isn't strictly mythicism, because we'll get into it. But yeah, it's not strictly mythicism, but I mean, it is like disproving like invalid evidence for a Jesus, I guess.
Sure. And waiting in the wings, we have Skylar and Transgender Reality. We'll be having a conversation with them here shortly. But let's start with the red herring, and we're going to begin with the Shroud of Controversy is what we've titled this. This is something that actually, Steve, do you want to let everybody know why we chose tonight's red herring as the Shroud of Turin?
Sure. Long story short, Dumpster Fire Twitter, myself, Casey, and Kyle engaging with people that have this notion that the Shroud of Turin is, in fact, the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. Not even maybe. They are asserting that it is, and therefore evidence and proof of God. That's where it came out.
And we're gonna, but I wanted to start with Steve found some really cool artifacts that people deem as holy, and actually, Steve had somebody make a comment to him that atheism is a death cult, and I want to give you evidence why that's not the case and why religion might be the death cult. Tonight we're gonna focus in on Saint Catherine and the fact that her body is scattered across most of Italy. And Dave, will go to the next picture. This is poor Saint Catherine's hand. I'm sorry. This is at one church in Italy. They paraded around down streets and glorified. Gee, I know that you have a comment about poor St. Catherine's hand. I can read it on your face.
No, I mean, I was just sitting there. I don't know. I was sitting there thinking about what do they do with it? Did they slap people with it and knock the cancer out of them or something? I mean,
I was thinking so much more dirty than that.
well, okay. Let's go the dirty route because there is something to be said in to that, Steve. Actually, do you know why they hold that hand holy and in high regard? From a very young age, Catherine
got his holy seal.
Well. From a very young age, Catherine claimed to have visions of Jesus, which eventually developed into what she called a mystical marriage, a relationship signified not by a wedding ring, but by an invisible ring of Jesus's foreskin. In adulthood,
Oh,
Catherine worked her foreskin-clad fingers to the bone, bettering the lives of the sick and the poor.
She wore a
And she was
foreskin.
named. Yeah,
What's she named?
yeah, foreskin.
Yeah, she wore a foreskin
Wedding
wedding ring. Yeah, so
Yeah.
ring made of foreskin. Okay.
Okay. They named her the patron saint of nurses and illness, and to honor her, or the most important parts. Dave, let's go to the next slide. They put poor Catherine's head in a cuckoo clock. That is the actual head of Catherine. When they found her body in the grave, they were going to move it. They picked up the body, much like you would someone who's sleeping, and her head right off. So they stuck her head. Yes.
So, like, when the alarm goes off, does like her tongue stick out and there's like a bird on top of it?
I'm not sure the tongue lasts that long. That would, you know what though? I can't not look at that picture and see that now. Like the eyes pop open and the tongue sticks out. Like, okay, but you know, somebody
virtually desecrated her body.
You
Would
know
that creep you out though?
Well, somebody broke in and took the clock. Somebody actually stole the head in the cuckoo clock. Now, when they found it, they then did this to it.
Oh no!
Next slide. They put her way back in the wall and have rebar around her head. So,
which
looks even creepier. Yeah, it looks even creepier. So,
I would not be surprised if you went to some kind of like Norwegian death metal group and their like video for like "Fuck the Saints" or something, and it's like they're dancing around and it's like or headbanging, I guess, and this is in the background. I would.
Dude,
totally
that would make
expect
that would make a killer heavy metal cover for an album, wouldn't it?
Actually,
for some reason, the words to
what
Do
we should-
Hast from Rammstein just ran through my head when that came
that's
up.
a good move. That's a good song though. You know what we need to do? We need to put a cigarette in her mouth and make her the patrons or the logo for us for Halloween. That's
Boy, that'd be so desecrating. That let's do it.
Okay. Next slide. Now we're gonna go to the Turin. Now, the person that we were in a Twitter fight with today was I actually asked them the one bit of evidence they would say is the evidence above evidences for God existing, and this is the one that I got, the Shroud of Turin. And despite the amount of articles we sent over debunking it over and over again, it was recently revisited in an independent article that came out in July about how that's not the case. But I'm going to let GE go through the reasons why this cannot be connected to what people claim is Jesus.
Right. So the Shroud of Turin has kind of a shady past in general. For one thing, we know that it was in a fire in I think the 16th century, where it was damaged a little bit. But after that, you know, of course, it was preserved and everything. And the Vatican actually wouldn't let any testing be done on it at all until I think it was like the 80s. I think it was 1988 before any radiocarbon dating was actually done on it. Once they actually did radiocarbon dating on it, it actually dated to the early 14th century. And then that's further supported by the fact that like there's no actual blood on it, like it's all like pigment. And I want to say that they said that it was pig's blood was maybe the base liquid or something like that. I'm not sure. I do know that they found colored pigments, a couple of different colored pigments, and so it was pretty much a forgery by some kind of artist. And you know, one of the key factors that actually helps knowing that it is a forgery is the fact that like the projection of Christ's image here isn't correct for if like he was a bloody corpse and they like wrapped him up in it. So like there's the position of the nails in the hands there. I mean, there's a lot of different things. Like I think the body ratio or what like ratio of the limbs to the body doesn't exactly match. what you would expect to find. So there's a lot of evidence supporting the fact that, it's a forgery and that it was just, carted around as one of these venerated objects. For instance, there's another venerated object that's like a vial of blood that they keep, and apparently it coagulates and decoagulates at various times. And of course, they won't let any kind of dating or anything like that be done on that either. But this is a similar thing to that. I'm guessing it was an artistic piece of work. There has been some attempts to revalidate it as being from the 1st century, but a lot of that takes a lot of assumptions that go against the evidence that we have. Like, for instance, the guy today, Epic Christ, or however you want to point that out, or say his name, he actually was putting out stuff that was like, oh, well, there was like 16th century fabric that was like woven into the shroud to fix it from the fire that happened. And like it's just like you can't detect like the extra fiber that was worked into the entire thing. And that's disproven by the fact that when the carbon dating was done and it was sent to the several academic laboratories, you had multiple like experts like in textiles and all of the shit that was observing like where it was taken from and all that other kind of stuff. And so it's either they like didn't notice this and there's no perceptible way to actually see like the extra fiber that was worked in, or that's not actually the case. So I think that it's more parsimonious to assume that, well, this was a good piece. The radiocarbon dating dates it back to the 13th century, and then you have all of this other evidence that supports that too. I actually covered this one other video where apparently, and this is the craziest idea that I've heard surrounding the Shroud of Turin, is that apparently a black hole type thing opened up right where Jesus was, and he like disappeared from the cloth, thereby like causing the image on the shroud and everything like that.
It's the most likely scenario out there, so it has to be true.
Yeah. Well, because of radiation is what it supposedly does.
No, they think there's. Yeah, I blame CERN. It's got to be because of CERN. CERN opened up a time thing to 2,000 years ago, and this is what happened.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's. Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
You think Kyle? People have all kinds of obscene things to to throw in there to try to justify their belief that this is real.
Absurd, though. Like, at what point, if you're offering up the idea that a black hole opened up on this planet and swallowed him whole, leaving this for this shroud, I mean, it's time to reevaluate things.
God works in mysterious ways, Kyle.
Or your grip on reality. Like, if a black hole opened on the planet,
who are you to judge God?
Well, and the guy today was using like scientific studies that have been debunked or retracted. Like the main one that he was using was actually put out in like legitimate science journal, and but see, the problem there is that they seem to have exploited the peer review process, because the journal that they submitted it to actually didn't handle those types of papers. And so what I've read about it is that generally they ask the person, well, who do you suggest? And of course, the guy that wrote the paper is part of this Shroud of Turin study group. And he suggested people that were in the study group who also have like legitimate science papers on other topics, but he knew that they would be favorable to this one. So, I mean, he kind of skirted around the peer review process and got it published in an actual bit of literature that it shouldn't have been published in, but he found a loophole. And so that's being purported as debunking the idea that the shroud's from the 13th or 14th century. And I just think it's sad that they have to go to the lengths of using this bad information, bad science, and supporting this bad science when it's been proven to be bad. I mean, it's just like anti-vaxxers who still use that one debunked study that from like what 25 years ago or so.
Wakefield.
I mean, I think it's crazy the links that they'll go to.
Bitter clingers. I think that's what Obama called them. Bitter clingers.
Do you know what I think? Do you know what I think the most damning evidence is actually, though? It's not even the fact that it's been studied and shown to be a forgery. The most damning evidence to me is the fact that the Catholic Church itself will not authenticate it. They will not say that this is a holy relic. They have no stance on it. They won't even come out and
a bishop wrote the Pope saying that it was that it wasn't authentic. That was in the Independent article.
And some other Pope had actually said, I know a Pope or Bishop, but they actually said, and this is quite some time ago, so I have to go find it, but they basically said something along the lines of, even if it's not real, it symbolizes blah, blah, blah kind of thing, right? Which, okay, great, but that's not what it's purported to be, right? I mean, that changes the whole narrative of it being this some holy relic, because they're saying, well, it's still a holy relic, but it's not of Jesus, but it's supposed to represent the cloth of Jesus. Well, that's kind of a little bit dishonest there, I think. It's great, yeah.
It's a cool
art,
painting.
sure.
I mean,
awesome.
Yeah, artistically, it's a cool painting. It was probably done by some guy I don't know if it was intentionally done as a hoax. That would be a really cool question. Is there any ideas of who might like actually be the artist or where it originated from?
No, to my recollection, there's no idea who the original artist was or who created this or whatnot. We just know that it popped. The first instance of it popping up anywhere is in I think 1365 or something, which they placed the radiocarbon dating placed it about 1320, I want to say. So I mean, we know that it originates to the 14th century, and that there's just no mention of it prior to that.
And also there's signs that there might have been some deliberate heat damage or heat to cause some of this stuff, because there's a little bit of relief on the fabric. There's what somebody was calling 3D information. Sure, okay, it is 3D information, but they make it sound so technical, right? Like it's 3D encoded information on a 2D plane. Only that could be from a higher power. No, if you have any kind of relief, right? If it's embossed or if it has a heat element to it, it can kind of change the fabric, so it has a little bit of raise. Matter of fact, they did this. They experimented on it, something similar, and show that you could do this. And so it doesn't require supernatural causation to have quote 3D information. It just means that it's raised or embossed a little bit. That's all that means. So it's not just a flat painting. There's more to it. But again, so what?
Yeah, and artists have been able to reproduce this type of art, in the recent past. So, this just follows the other venerated objects that we know are not actually, of the descent that people claim them to be, because all throughout history you have people claiming, oh, these were the nails that nailed up Jesus, and this is Jesus's footprint, and this is where Jesus
you can buy those off eBay. No, seriously, you can go buy some Jesus nails off eBay. Legit.
Well, everybody knows where Jesus' footprints are. They're in the sand in those because people have pictures of them. The footsteps, they appear.
That was the name of the poem, Footsteps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't be credit.
There was also a miraculous painting in, I believe it was Mexico. I can't remember what the name of it was, but basically this person had like a canvas and they were running to a church. And then when they got to the church, it had this painting of Mary, the Jesus's mom, on it.
That's a little more classy than her last appearance, which was on a grilled cheese sandwich.
Yeah, I know, right?
But that takes some skill to do. You know how difficult it is to appear like an apparition on a grilled cheese sandwich? That's some powerful ghost stuff.
Not anymore, because somebody has made the Mother Mary panini press.
Toaster?
Real thing.
Yeah. Panini press. The Mother Mary panini press. I gotta have one of those.
It's a real thing. So yeah, but I thought this was a cool thing to talk about and discuss, because for some reason it's making a resurgence, and it's kind of just desperate I think, for this to be your number one source of proof for God.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't consider it so much a resurgence. I mean, I think that there was obviously a lot of people that hold, oh, well, this is actually Jesus, and I don't care what kind of information you show me about it. But I think that you have these fringe groups out there that have these biases, and like they start investigating something, looking to prove what they already think about it. Like when they start investigating, they're like, okay, well, we know this dates back to the 1st century, so what can we do to prove that? Instead of like testing, okay, well, what does the evidence show us? They're trying to make the evidence fit their preconceived narrative. And you have groups like this all the time. AIG, the Shroud of Turin group, study group, they're all over the place. So
Agreed. Steve, any last minute thoughts on the Shroud?
Only for the fact that on Twitter you had a couple people, like we were saying, that was just promoting this as fact, right? And I think that's a dishonest way to even go about talking about things like this, right? If somebody says, "Hey, I do believe this is the Shroud of Christ. Let me give you my reasons." Okay, fair enough, right? But when somebody just comes out there and says, "This is proof of this," and there could be no other way, you're automatically, to me, not worthy of having a conversation with. That's just how I look at it, because at that point you were just being a fanatic. You have nothing to offer but a mere assertion that it must be true because of reasons. And I get tired of those types of discussions. They don't go anywhere when you're dealing with that kind of evangelical nuttery. So,
agreed. GE, do you want to before we say our farewell? Do you? I heard that you have a new hit single out that you're going to share with our audience.
Earbud
People
alert.
have been
Earbud
asking for
alert.
the ukulele.
We need to get an earbud alert.
The Shroud of Turin is shit. Quit using it to prove Jesus. The Shroud of Turin is shit. Stop using bad science. Fuck off.
Hey, you had 2 chords that time. That's progress.
What? 3?
Oh, was it 3? I didn't hear the progression. I just
What
heard
do you
2.
mean?
Well, that's good. That's good.
All right, Godless Engineer, thank you so much for stopping in, and congratulations on your 68th appearance on the show. I'm sure we'll hit number 69 very soon, and actually as soon as next week, because you're pretty much here weekly on ideology.
Seems like
you make yeah. Oh wait, you did not say hello to everybody like usual.
Oh, what's up, heathens? How y'all doing?
Now we can move on. Thank you, Godless Engineer, for moving on.
And no, Godless Engineer is not the transgender Christian apologist, people. Are you? Maybe things change. I don't want to misgender or misappropriate your theological position there, G.
I will say that is factually incorrect. I don't have a problem with the transgender community, but it is factually incorrect.
Okay, so he's not.
Excellent. It's time that we meet the actual transgender apologist, don't you think?
Yes, let's meet them.
Let's say hello to her and Skylar.
Oh,
Welcome,
I thought it was
welcome,
Skylar. Okay. Now I understand, because I thought Skylar was going to be the transgender Christian apologist, because he changes his position like every other week.
I'm in transition right now. I'm still working on it. We're trying to figure things out,
He went from theist to deist to atheist, back to deist, and now back to atheist. So yeah,
he's transitioning from identifying as a fedora to identifying as a ball cap.
Oh no! We never wore fedora. I have to grow out a neck if I wore fedora.
I like fedoras.
No.
Do you?
You would, Steve. You would.
Skylar may. Skylar has a way of finding people that I just find fascinating. I really do. We've had a couple of them on here, and like Matt Powell was an extension of Skylar finding Matt Powell. He just has a way of finding people who are interesting. But the most fascinating person, to hear her is you, transgender reality.
Yeah, everything was
Can you
like
hear me?
going a bit loopy for a minute. Yeah, I can hear you. It was just
Okay.
all kind of, I don't know, loopy for a minute.
We're just breaking up a little bit, yeah.
Am I?
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Okay. Let me fix that. Steve, why don't you say hello to our guest while
Okay. First of all, hey Skylar, good seeing you again. Welcome back. I missed you,
Yes.
so welcome back. Transgender reality. Have not met you yet. Well, kind of did before the show, but hey, welcome to Non-Sequitur. Not
Thank
sure
you so
what the hell you
much.
two are supposed to be talking about. I don't know. I'm not privy to this. We were on Skylar's show though not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I was
You
on
guys have a
Scarlett's show
yeah.
a while ago. I had a friend and I said, hey, you know, I'd like to get involved in some of these discussions that they have. And he said, well, you should go check out this guy named Skylar Fiction. So I watched a couple of shows. I really liked what he was doing. So I sent him an email. I was like, can I be on your show? And he was like, yeah, and it was really good, right? Like I really enjoyed the way Skylar talked to me. You know, I didn't feel like being attacked. It was just a conversation. It was really, really nice. His fan base was wonderful. And I am
Wait,
like an interesting like,
fans?
oxymoron. Yeah, he's got one or two. You know, I mean, you know,
Couple.
what they
Couple.
what they lack in size, they make up for in veracity. So
Sounds like my sex. Just like my sex. Yeah.
I have to say
really,
that Skylar has a lot of
I'm sorry, I
fans
didn't.
because
No, so we
I
have a
know
lot
every
of
time
lag
he's
right
on-
now. Transgender reality. One sec, Kai, you're breaking up hardcore, and so nobody's trying to step on you. It's just your audio is.
yeah, that's fine.
So transgender, go ahead and say what you're gonna
It's
say. Then
storming.
let's fix. Oh,
I was just gonna say, like, I had no idea. Like, kind of the same thing with Sky. Like, I have no idea what you expect. I try to come into these things like so I can be surprised. So honestly, I really have no idea what to expect from all this. So it's quite exciting to me.
why didn't you tell us, Skylar? Because I don't know either. I'm on the edge of my chair here.
What? How amazing I am? Is that what we were talking about? My amazing channel?
Yes.
No, I wasn't thinking that.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm just used to saying it myself over and over again. No, I don't even, what I didn't pay attention. What question did you just ask me? I'm sorry. I was just looking at something. I'm so terrible. I'm sorry.
By the way, welcome to Non-Sequitur, Skylar. How many beers in the bag are you now?
Here's the problem: is I haven't had any beers tonight. I'm not gonna because I stayed up way too late last night on my channel drinking, and now I'm exhausted. So I think I'm a little loopy from lack of sleep. No, we had a great conversation. Is it okay? It's okay if I call you Catherine. Is that all right? Transgender.
Yeah. Kathleen is fine.
Kathleen,
Yeah.
that's it.
People get I've
I-
actually been given a new name via the great debate community. I'm now known as the Reasonable Christian, and I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or an insult. I'm not really sure.
You don't even want to know what
It's a bit of an
it's probably a good
oxymoron.
compliment.
I have a lot of worse names in the great debate community.
Well,
I don't know,
For one, Skylar has a lot of fans because every time he's on this show, people in the comments just gush over Skylar, especially when he went against Sai. People thought that he just brought it to Sai. So congratulations on that, Skylar. Number one.
All right,
Well, I don't know if I would consider that much of a victory beating Saitan.
It's fun though. It is fun. I gotta admit, I like nailing precepts with our own argument. It is.
Yeah,
enjoyable.
precepts is special, aren't they? They're a special group.
Yes,
You
they're
know.
special. There's a sick
So-
perverted thing we get out of it. I don't know why, but we do.
I thought tonight we would let Skylar have a conversation, much like you did on Skylar's channel, and like I have a couple of questions that I sent to Skylar to kind of work into the conversation, just for me, because as a I myself am part of the LGBTQ community, and
Awesome.
the idea that you can, I guess, square some of the things that the Bible says with that is what I'm most interested in.
That's basically my primary area of apologetics. I'm actually I'm been composing so many things. I think I might as well just throw it into some kind of book and do a publisher. But basically, my primary of apologetics is arguing for the compatibility of LGBT people inside a traditionally Orthodox Christian faith. And I make a lot of enemies. I make a lot of enemies on the one side. It's funny. I generally have more Christians attacking me than I do non-Christians.
That makes sense. That makes sense. They're not a big fan of the gays and transgender people.
Yeah, they're really not.
Well, and
it's
too,
funny,
I mean, yeah.
Because it almost seems like I can understand the attempt to make an argument against homosexuality because, if we just, misspell a couple words, I guess we can get to homosexual. But, there's no mention of transgender people in the Bible whatsoever. So we really don't know what any of them thought about transgender people. So I guess we got to kind of qualify trans and gay as the same to kind of come up with a position. And, it's funny to me because if we look at some liberal denominations, they will actually so Presbyterian USA allows homosexual marriage, but it's interdenominational. So it's up to the particular church. And a lot of them are against it. But then we get this conservative commentator, Pat Robinson, who's the most loony evangelical out there. And he's yeah, trans people, totally real, totally accepted by Christ. So, it runs the gamut.
What?
Well,
Pat Robertson said that?
Yeah. He was why would I reject transgender people?
Wasn't he the guy that said 9/11 was? Wasn't he the one that said 9/11 was due to gay people and Katrina too?
Yes,
or something.
Yes.
Yeah, that guy. He's trans people totally fine. Gay people,
okay.
Gay people burn
they
in hell.
But trans great. Gay not so
people,
much. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think back in the days of the Bible when when it was written, I don't know that there was there a thing as transgender back then. I mean,
well, here's what it mentions. Right? Well, no. Here's the thing. Here's what it mentions. And I'll read it real quick. Because in Deuteronomy 22, verse 5, it says, "Women shall not wear men's garment, and nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God." So it's not going to use the word transgender because that's a very very new term, basically. But it does refer to men wearing women's clothing and women wearing men's clothing. And even interesting, when I was looking some information up on this, I found a very interesting scripture from the New Testament about women wearing braids, which is apparently not something you're supposed to do if you're a woman. And it says, First Timothy.
I wanted to wear a dress or something. I mean, just
do
fill
not adorn your hair.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Don't adorn your hair with ornamentation. This is all Paul, by the way.
Yeah, this is in Timothy. It says, maybe shouldn't adorn themselves, and they should adorn themselves in respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, but with what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works. There's a lot of Christian women out there committing sin.
It doesn't really tell you what that adornment should be. It just tells you that it should be godly. So there's no J.C. Penney catalog that we can go to that's got the godly section. That we can. Okay, this is good. This is good. This is good. Maybe the CS Roebucks had it, but they've gone out of business. So
how would you though respond to what Skylar just read?
Well, so a couple ways that we can respond to Deuteronomy 22:5. The first way is just to say that the Levitical Deuterocanonical laws are specifically applicable only to the Israelite people and were never meant to be practiced by the universal church at large. And that's a completely acceptable position to hold. And it's one that I do hold. I believe that the 10 Commandments are the moral law that are universal, but the 603 laws of Leviticus and Deuteronomy don't hold any application to the modern Christian. If you are something of an inerrantist, hold to the Chicago's doctrine on inerrancy, you could, of course, go to the book of Hebrew and Timothy and look of what Paul said about following the law. Or you could just attempt to interpret the verse in a different way. One of the more popular interpretations of that verse is not necessarily dealing with day-to-day clothing, but that women should not wear men's clothing, specifically being clothing of war, and that men should not wear women's clothing to abscond from war. And this is a fairly popular interpretation where it's basically preventing women from fighting in war, wearing armor, and that men should not, dress as women to get out of war.
Would that be like a
because
clinger
obviously
thing?
women
That's a bit
would.
of a reach, don't you think? Don't you think that's a reach?
Yeah,
wouldn't that,
that
I mean,
reminds me of,
if
like,
we're speaking honestly,
MASH.
wouldn't that be a little bit of a reach in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily, I wouldn't call it a reach. I would call it a less than majority opinion held on that, but it is a decently acceptable translation of that verse, because, we also know that women were forbade from fighting in war. Men were required to fight in war. And a lot of times what would happen is men would disguise themselves as women to kind of try to get out of the country in order to not have to fulfill their Abrahamic duties. And oftentimes women would try to fight. So it's not necessarily that I'm saying this is like the greatest interpretation ever. I don't particularly need that interpretation because I just go with it's not applicable to me anyway.
Plausible.
Yeah, but there's bigger problems to that then, right? Because I mean, it's still not saying that God didn't make these laws. Like God still told these Israelites to kill gay people, and that he still told people that transgender people were not transgender. We'll just say men who wear women's clothing, women who wear men's clothing are an abomination to him. Like these morals are rooted in God's very nature here. So like it's got to feel kind of like, I don't know, like if I were gay or transgender, like I would feel kind of shitty that my God basically did those things to people you align with, right? Like you can't really say that God is LGBT friendly when he ordered human beings to kill gay people. Like it seems like there's a bit of a contradiction there.
He did create the rainbow.
Sure, yeah. It's funny because there's a guy that I regularly interact with called Christian Hillbilly. And he says that.
Oh, good Lord.
Why?
No. That's the first
Why?
time and hope last time that name was ever mentioned on NonSequitur show.
I'm glad you guys know who that is. So on the back of his car, he's got a poster that says "Taking Back the Rainbow."
Yeah, I know. I know
Fuck
him
you,
very
Christian Hillbilly.
well
Fuck
for
you.
a long time.
Yeah.
He is. We could spend a whole new show just talking about the
Oh my
atrocities.
goodness! He's singing now. He sings to us now when he comes into our chats instead of actually talking to us. He
Where
just
does he hang
sings to
out?
us.
Wait, where does he hang out? Because he was basically thrown out of the Great Debate community. We tossed him out. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with him. He's reprehensible. He's vile. He's sick. We don't have anything to do with him. So where did he run off to? Oh, geez.
Darth Dawkins.
You're just
No longer. Darth Dawkins, who no longer. He no longer goes by Darth Dawkins. He goes by. Well, Darth hates me, right? Darth hates me. I've made his wiki.
World.
I'm one of the very mean people that Darth Dawkins is scared of.
I love you.
But but him and Christian Hillbilly have been relegated to a Discord server called Politics, run by a guy named That Sass, and that's kind of where that's the only place left where they can kind of spout their nonsense. But yeah, I agree to an extent, right? It is difficult for me to, kind of rationally argue in my head that here we have part of the Bible, the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, and it's saying, sleeping with a man is punishable by death. Sleeping with a woman is punishable by death. It's hard for me to rationalize that with Christ and Christ's message, right? So there is, I will admit that's kind of a difficult thing to do. But at the same time, I am not a biblical inerrantist. And so I don't argue necessarily that the Bible is in any way literal or reflective of a cosmological argument for creation. I think that the Pentateuch at the time, maybe that was the best thinking of the time. I don't know. But it's just wrong by any moral standard today. And I think that when Jesus came, a lot of people, especially Christians, will intentionally misinterpret Jesus to kind of fill a political agenda. I would argue that the Western Christian church as a whole is no longer representative of the message of Christ at large. I don't know what Jesus would say to a homosexual couple if he were here today, but I would hazard a guess that he would certainly not throw them off a building or burn them at a stake or anything like that. And I think it's relevant that the only verse that Christians use for marriage comes from Mark and is then repeated in Matthew and Luke. I do hold to Mark and primacy, others do not, but this verse is wholly dealing with the eschaton. So I'm going to say something now that is probably going to make Christians scream and atheists go, what the hell? But Jesus made a mistake in the Bible.
What the hell?
He, in the book of Mark, was talking about divorce and marriage, and he was speaking about it in an eschatological sense. Jesus thought the eschaton was right around the corner, right? He thought that the second coming was right there. There was no point in getting divorced because there's no marriage in heaven, and there's no point in getting married if you're not already married because the end time's right around the corner. So if we're to follow that literally, no Christian should ever get married. So this is a prime example of Jesus not even having unlimited knowledge, right? Jesus didn't know everything. Jesus could only speak about the things of the day. So if that's the only verse that we can really go by on marriage, we have no foundational point to argue against any kind of marriage. And I have created... Yeah, go ahead.
Can I stop you real quick and ask you a question, and then I'll let Skylar take back over? If we are to believe the Bible and modern Christian thinking, Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit are all one person, right? So how could he not know that the end was really not coming if he's a part of that Trinity? They're all connected. How could he not know?
Well, he said he doesn't, right? He said he said out of his own mouth, none know the end, not even the Son, except for the Father. So they're not one being. So I think Trinitarian understanding can be difficult. I hold to what is known as common divine nature. So when I say God, I am speaking about the common divine nature, the confluence of all three members of the Trinity. So that's my monotheistic element. But each member of the Trinity is a wholly independent consciousness, an independent person. Jesus was not the Father is not the Spirit is not Jesus. And each one of those has a specific task inside the common divine nature to fulfill. The Father is the arse nature of the Trinity. Jesus is the creative part of the Trinity, and the Spirit is the interpersonal communication part of the Trinity. Interpersonal communicative relationship.
You would believe in a divine creator such that the universe was created by Jesus under the guidance of the Father?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Skylar?
Just to be clear, I want to make sure I understand something. So you're saying that the verses in Deuteronomy were not written by God; they were not inspired by God.
I do think that there is an inspiration to the Old Testament, but humans, like, inspiration doesn't mean that God took someone's hand, put it on a piece of paper, and said, this is what you're doing.
Sure.
No, inspiration to me, like I think these texts came from dreams and special revelation and oral tradition. And so while I will say that they have knowledge and wisdom and value to Christians and really anybody, they're not what we follow today. We follow the moral law of Jesus, which is honor God, love your neighbor, and love your neighbor equals, basically the other 8 commandments, with the exception of the Sabbath, which is fulfilled in Christ himself. So that is what we as Christians are supposed to follow. Don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't murder, be a mensch. That's what Jesus wants us to do. He wants us to be a mensch.
I don't. Okay, so you're basically saying that God never really said to kill gay people, or that any of this stuff was an abomination. So this was just stuff where it was things that are false in the Bible, basically.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that. Again, there seems to be almost a bipolar thing going on with the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. It's almost as if Jesus is the balance to the Father in this when Jesus comes, right? Because if you read the Old Testament, there's death, there's destruction, there's God wiping existence off with Noah, killing the unborn of Egypt, David doing his whole spiel, Isaiah doing his whole spiel, and then we go to the New Testament, right? And Jesus is like,
believe God did those things, though? Like, do you believe God did those things? That's the key to this. Because I need to know that.
Yeah. Okay, so no, I don't take Genesis or Exodus to be literal books. I take them to be polemics.
Okay.
So I do not think Genesis is a literal. I don't think that Genesis literally happened. I don't even know if I would go so far as to say there is a guy named Abraham who actually existed. I think this is oral tradition of the Israelites that was inspired by God for a purpose, to differentiate the Israelites from the Egyptians and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Jebusites. But I don't take it to be literal, which is why I'm not a young earth creationist.
Well, I don't think I get that. But at the same time, though, then you could just throw out there's no need for Jesus if we don't take at least somewhat of Genesis literal. Because there's no need for any kind of salvation. Like, what are we being saved from? If it's not a literal story where we've now fallen and we need a redeemer, there's really no need for Jesus Christ to die on the cross for us.
So I think that's to elevate the authority of the Bible, which is very Western. It's very Western to say that the Bible is the final, inerrant, infallible authority of God. But God would exist even if the Bible didn't. And, God would exist even if we didn't exist. God has a nature. If we are disobedient to that nature, we need to be saved. So regardless of whether or not you would, well, that's just what I believe, right? I believe in God.
Asking you why, though. I know, but why would being disobedient to God equal that I need to be saved?
Well, when I'm saying being disobedient, needing to be saved, right, is that we are held accountable for our actions, both in the mortal finite plane and the eternal plane. If you do something wrong here, you're held accountable. If you yell at your wife, you don't get sex. Mm-hmm. If you go kill someone, you go to jail. So we're held accountable for our actions here on Earth.
But how would we even know what our actions are? But the thing is, you just said that this stuff isn't literal. But you said this stuff isn't literal from the Genesis and from Exodus, and I'd imagine you throw Leviticus in there too. Probably is not literal. I'm sorry. So if these aren't literal and these are just stories that kind of tell some kind of lesson, like how would we even know what the rules are, or the lessons are, or like what we're not supposed to do? And what's good though. But really, my main point was what if we disobey God? So why does that mean that we need a savior? Like he doesn't have to repercussions. Just like my children. My children did. Let's say my son stole a cookie, right? I don't have to punish him. That's not. It's up to me if I don't want to punish him or not. I could choose to because I want to have some form of discipline, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean I have to. So why would because
I'm not saying that you do have to. I'm not necessarily saying that God has to do anything. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't proceed to say God has to do anything, but he has chosen to do certain things. And my not taking Genesis to be literal, I don't think my view on the Bible is that it is the attestation of the word. So I believe in the infallible salvific nature of the Bible, and that's about it. I believe the Bible has a purpose. The Bible's purpose is to communicate to the reader that Jesus has died for your sins, and that if you believe into him, you will not die but have everlasting life. Outside of that, it's a book of wisdom. It's a book that shows in the Old Testament what the Jews kept on doing, the Israelites, the God would come in and say, hey, I've given you this perfect world and you can do anything you want except for this one thing. And the Jews are like, yeah, no, screw you, God, I'm going to do it anyway. And God was like, all right. And then, he said, all right, well, just don't do this then. And the Jews are like, no, I'm going to do that too. So Jesus is like, yeah, whack. And that's basically the perpetuation of the Old Testament. It's just the Jews doing something, God punishing for them, God recreating a system to try to, help them along.
Well, I mean, how are you deciding what's actually real in the Old Testament then? Because how do we decide what's actually happened? Because you don't believe, I guess, God or the Israelites, the gay people. You don't believe the stuff about the transgender stuff.
Well, I
so
don't.
What do you believe
I
in
think
the slavery
What
stuff?
about the Ten Commandments?
Or the genocide?
Do you
Or
believe that happened?
Well, so I think that Leviticus and Deuteronomy are actual books, and I think that is the law that the Israelites practiced. Those two books, Leviticus and Deuteronomy, are literally just law books, no different than the law books that you would find in any other attorney's office. They
given by
spell
God,
out
not
what
by
the law
people.
is.
You think all
Right,
of
so
the
they would
laws,
say
613 were used? I mean, you think that they actually try to implement all the Levitical laws? There's 613
it's fun. It's funny, when we think about 613, we think about it as a large number until we realize that, just the United States federal government has about 800,000 laws.
But these are moral
so
codes.
613 becomes a very small number. But
these are
I
very
think
specific
that
things.
I think that it's interesting because the Old Testament spells out that the Israelites could condone capital punishment, but when we read certain texts from ancient Israelites, they did everything they could to not kill people. So it's like God is saying this is the punishment, and the Israelites were like, no, this doesn't make sense, right? So they oftentimes ancient Israeli jurisprudence makes our system look almost Stalinistic in nature. Again, I think we have Christians don't follow Old Testament. Christians follow Jesus. This is the reason we call ourselves Christians, is because we follow Christ. And Christ made it abundantly clear what we are supposed to do.
Well, he wants you to follow the commandments and things and that's, I believe he's referring to some of the Old Testament. I mean, besides the 10 Commandments, I mean, you have all these laws, but I mean, that's not the main point is that this God, basically promotes genocide. He promotes slavery. He promotes death to gay people. But I don't see how we could bring any value out of that coming from there. But to say but you really just now at a point where we're just picking and choosing what we like from the book in order to kind of fit the narrative here. Because if we're just throwing out the rules, because in the beginning of the chapter it says God gave these rules to Moses to give to his people. But these are the laws that are to live by. This is what he was trying to separate the culture to make it unique compared to the cultures around him. And I definitely don't buy the idea that they weren't a violent culture. I mean, they did all kinds of violent things. Especially the genocide is a very clear example of it. I mean, Abraham, look at Abraham. Abraham had everybody cut the foreskin of their dicks off because it was some kind of weird covenant with God, basically. So, they sacrificed animals. God made Abraham think that he was going to have to sacrifice his son in that story. It's all really real sadistic.
I understand, right? We can look at these things and be like, oh my God. But I think it's how you approach the stories, right? Because that's what they are, they're stories. I think these are stories, oral traditions that were penned down to kind of give warning, right? Don't disobey God, right? And it's the same thing that we do with our children, right? We tell our kids stories all the time to try to teach them a moral lesson. We say, oh, well, let me tell you the story about such and such who did this one thing, and this is what happened, right? We as parents, I mean, I'm a parent, you're a parent, we do this all the time. And we're trying to teach our children a lesson. And I look at these books as that it's trying to teach us a lesson, and we can absolutely get value out of that. Both atheist and theist alike can get value from the Bible. There are good moral teachings in the Bible. There's also some things that are just not applicable to modern day society. But that, and again, like people throw this around, say, Kat, you pick and choose. This is, I think everyone here was born in America. You grew up in America. You've been exposed to Western kind of Protestant Christianity, which is all neo-denominational. And so a person who comes in and says, yeah, I don't hold to this dogmatic single denomination view, right? My views come from Eastern Orthodoxy, they come from Catholicism, they come from Protestantism. And so when I approach a situation in the Bible, I don't say, what do the Baptists say? What do the Catholics say? I say, what makes most sense? What makes most rational sense to me? And so oftentimes what makes most rational sense is to take a view from the Eastern Orthodoxy and hold it against a Roman Catholic and hold it against the Reformed Church and see which adds up.
I think, though, the problem is you're saying like the Old Testament was about, the Jews were punished for not listening to God and disobedience. But then at the same time, you're saying the stuff that they were disobedient with didn't really exist, right? You're saying, no, this is just a story. This is a metaphor. And then we list the things that you would be disobeying God by doing, like a woman dressing as a man, committing homosexual acts, bacon. Men with crushed testicles couldn't go to church. All kinds of weird things in the Old Testament, right? And you're saying that, like, it's all about listening to God, but then you say the examples where God told you to do something didn't really actually happen. So how do we square? So how would I know which stuff is actually the rules? Why would we just pick the 10 Commandments as if the 10 Commandments just because they sound better? Yeah.
Why would God? Why would God give us bacon and tell us not to eat it? What kind of cruel being is that?
Well, you can't eat bacon,
that is a
right?
Well, they couldn't eat bacon.
Well, wait a second.
God gives us bacon
Well, they
can't.
The Israelites can't eat.
I can eat bacon though.
Yeah, you can eat bacon,
No,
right? Bacon.
No, I think that's BS
God,
too.
right?
I don't think that's what the New Testament says. I think the New Testament says it's more important what comes out of your mouth, not what goes in. It doesn't mean that it's not important. I think this is a misrepresentation in the scripture. I think people are very liberal with this. Just because something is more important doesn't mean the first thing isn't important.
Well, no. So what we know, like, and actually, the bacon thing is a great example of if we hold to that this was inspired, right? As in God inspired a person to have this thought, to put it down on paper. Trichinosis is a very real thing for pig products. For a very, very long time, trichinosis is very deadly.
But it's not any longer. Trichinosis is not.
But it's not around anymore, right?
It's not around. We don't have a problem with that.
Right. It's not, and trichinosis was pretty much gone by the time Jesus came around, because
people still think that you can get trichinosis from pork. Well, people still think you can get trichinosis from pork, but not the way it's processed any longer.
Well, maybe if you killed like a wild boar in the
sure,
Sahara,
but the pork you get now, you can't get trichinosis from it. You can eat raw pork, actually.
I think this is like, again, showing wisdom, right? Like, there was this thing called trichinosis. It killed a lot of people. The Jews saw that this was killing a lot of people. Don't eat pig. Solves that, right? Just don't eat pig. No more trichinosis. We've solved that issue, and this made its way into the law books. But I think the hard thing for, again, most people that have been only exposed to Western understandings of Christianity, the hard thing to understand is the Old Testament is the Old Testament for a reason. I am bound by what Christ said. And the only thing that Christ repeated as law or command was the 10 Commandments. He repeated 9 out of the 10 Commandments, and the 10th being the Sabbath, and we understand Jesus is the fulfillment of the Sabbath. So that's what I hold to be, that is what I'm supposed to do. So then if we bring this all the way back around to the homosexual issue, I ask Christians, can you give me a biblically sound argument that would lead me to believe that a New Testament understanding of Jesus is incompatible with a homosexual union? And the only thing they're ever able to do is give me like a logically reductive argument, which basically falls down to your genitals. And since we can't reduce God to a physical property, we can't reduce love to a physical property, and we can't reduce ordination to a physical property, why in the world would I accept that we can reduce marriage to a physical property? And they get stuck. They don't know how to answer that.
Interesting.
Well, yeah. Well, I would say there's so much here. I mean, I'm still stuck on the whole thing. Why we need a savior? Like, what physically happens when Jesus dies on a cross that makes everything better? Like, for your actions,
So,
like, how does that actually redeem my, like, if I steal something, how does that make stealing something redeemed now, and now I'm acceptable to go to heaven?
well, so if in our world you stole something, you understand that there is a process by which you need to go through to be considered redeemed in the eyes of our society. Right?
Sure, because these
You
are
go in
human,
front of
these
a
are human,
judge.
but they're human concepts. Like, these are human constructs that we've created as a society. This is so, like,
Right,
what you're
it's
talking
just
about.
an
God is
analogy.
completely different. Yeah. Well, no, I agree,
Right,
but
it's just an
the
analogy.
analogy kind of doesn't work. But the analogy doesn't really work because it's not the same situation as what God would do. Like, God doesn't have to,
So-
like, God. If I make a board game, right, I can make whatever rules I want for the board game, right? God
Yeah.
doesn't have to make a board game where basically he has to die in order to forgive you for the actions that you disobeyed him on.
Sure. I think, again, this is just a differentiation of belief, right? Is that you don't hold to a creator conscious. I don't know what you, but you don't hold to a creator conscious. I hold to a creator conscious, so no reason to reject that this creator conscious would not have certain things that he or she or whatever expects to be done. And
What do you mean by creator conscience? Don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean by just there's a creator with a mind, a conscience, and a, like, what does that mean?
yeah, so I consider God to be the first mover, the uncaused cause, the fact that created causation. And I believe that is the Trinitarian God. And so when he chose to create, he chose to create, in his way. So I have no reason to reject that if God says, you have disobeyed and there must be atonement for this, and the only way to atone for this is a perfect atonement, and the only perfect atonement could possibly be a divine being, then it would logically entail that the Son would have to die for us to be saved. Now, saved, I understand, like this, like, oh, why do I need to be saved? Well, we can just kind of get rid of the word saved and just look at it as atonement for something that you've done. We in our mortal world must atone for things that we do that is against the law of the land which we live in. We live in God's land. We break God's laws. We must atone for those as well.
Well, it sounds like you're just basically saying God made a movie script and is just playing out the movie. So God chose in the very beginning he
if
would
you
make
want to look at it
human
that
beings.
way, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
I have no problem with that analogy.
Well, I mean, basically, you think about it, like, just explain it. It's like basically God made the universe, and then he made it in a way that human beings were going to fail, and then he made it to once they failed and they disobeyed him, and that he would and also he chose to react in a way that it would bother him if human beings disobeyed him, because I don't see why it necessarily entails that God has to even be bothered when people disobey him, right? And then he made it in a way that he in order to fix a problem he caused, he would have to come back in the flesh to atone for basically the way he designed everything. It seems like so counterproductive to his goal. Really strange. It's like the worst. Like,
strange,
as a human being, like if I set a goal, like if it's like me, I don't know, like if I set a goal to lose weight and then like I just eat Twinkies all day, and like it's like the opposite of the goal. Like if God wants to have a relationship with us and love us and have a real connection with us, because that's the most important thing, I would imagine most Christians argue. But then he sets up a situation where people, and I don't know, I forgot from our conversation if you actually believe in hell or not. But like then he creates a situation up where basically people aren't going to reach that goal, and then people are going to go to hell, and then with all this other stuff, all the suffering happens. What, just to play out what he wants?
Yeah, I mean, I get the criticisms. I'm well aware of the criticisms. I think the issue comes into the fact that I've never seen a compelling reason why I should not believe that God is the creator of the universe, right? That's the big thing, is that I have no reason to disbelieve that Jesus created the universe. And if I have no reason to disbelieve that, then I have no reason to disbelieve that certain elements of the Bible are true. And so I think that the thing that is predicated on is whether or not you hold that there is enough evidence, whatever type of evidence one would accept, to believe that that the universe was created, or that the universe just kind of happens to be here, whether you hold to kind of a Neoplatonic understanding of creation or an Aristotelian view of creation, objectivism versus subjectivism, realism versus anti-realism. I just see no logically entailed reason how a material universe could be created from a non-material thing. And I see no reason to understand how a material universe born out of chaos could possibly logically entail uniformity. So I just kind of go on the fact that even if I disagree with some things that God may have done in the past, I have no reason to doubt his existence. That makes sense.
I mean, the problem is it sounds like a big argument from ignorance, basically. And the idea that, like, it doesn't have to be a Christian God by any means. It could be a deistic God that just has nothing to do with us, that just basically created the universe.
True.
Like, all the information that you have about the God you believe in comes from basically the Bible. And in why there's really no good reason to believe that the Bible is true. I mean, this is written by people thousands of years ago from different cultures that obviously, from reading it, like we were talking about earlier, didn't like gay people, were condoning slavery. Women were property, like straight up property. As a woman, you would have no rights whatsoever, right? I mean, God.
Yeah, the Old Testament wasn't. Look, I wouldn't have lasted very long in the Old Testament. You know?
Well, the New Testament thing too. The women weren't allowed to speak in church. You know, women are like it said. We have rules that are saying women can't have braided hair. They can't wear gold.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, women were still property. It wasn't like anything changed in the New Testament when Jesus was around. Like, women were still property in those times.
Well, I think I do think it's important to note that we have Pauline understanding of Christianity, and we have Christ's understanding of what we're supposed to do. Yeah, you know, again, right? I make the argument.
Are we throwing out that Paul? Are we throwing out the Paul stuff too? Is what's happening?
No.
We're only sticking with the Jesus stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't throw out anything, right? Like, I think the whole Bible has value, merit, wisdom, right? But you know, the thing is that there is what I consider the ivory tower argumentation for God, which is where we sit around and we kind of, you know, look at all the philosophically logical entailed parts of the Bible, and we try to run some kind of reductio ad absurdum on the Bible and come to these conclusions and everything. And that's fine in an ivory tower, but it's when we actually have to live in reality. Not wanting, you know, following the 10 Commandments is actually a pretty good way to live. And I don't think that churches today have a valid argument against homosexuals marrying. And I think in our previous conversation, I brought up Metropolitan Callistos Ware, who's the Archbishop, Eastern Orthodox Archbishop. I brought up Lorenzo Puhulu, who is another Eastern Orthodox bishop. We have the Presbyterian USA, we have the Lutheran, we have the Methodists, we have Episcopalians. You know, they're all moving this way. And the thing is that none of these churches just were sitting around just going, you know, So we need to buy more crackers, and we need to buy some more soup. And oh, by the way, we're going to approve homosexual marriage. No, they sat around and deliberated these things for an extended period of time and came to the conclusion that if we are to hold truly to dispensationalism, that the Holy Spirit has moved us from where we were in the past to where we are today, which is an acceptance of homosexuals being just as able to perform marital duties as any heterosexual counterpart. Transgender people, you know, I'm pretty much biased in the transgender community because I hold it to be a birth defect. And you know, if it's a birth defect, well, why would we, you know, use the Bible to say don't take medicine, right? No one's advocating pray the cancer away. So, you know, pray the transgender away doesn't really work for me.
Some religious people do. Like there's a lot of people. And this is but this is the problem. Like, is basically what it sounds like here is like you're just describing how humans are evolving and changing their views over time. Right? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Like things are getting more liberal in our societies, but at least in Western culture here in America. I mean, look, I think women won the right to vote in the 1920s or 30s or something like that. I forgot what the date, but I mean, this is modern history. Like, you know, look, I mean, even in this country, I mean, people use the Bible to justify segregation and slavery and all these kind of things. To say that, like, at this point, like we're like I said, we basically said, well, no, we're not going to follow the Paul stuff either. We're not going to follow the Old Testament stuff. Like, I don't know where we're actually getting our foundation, right? So how do you as a Christian, besides just looking at the 10 Commandments, like why don't we throw the 10 Commandments out? Why don't I just say, hey, maybe this is just a story here, a metaphor?
So I hold to my foundation being in Christ. So obviously where I find Christ actually working is in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the book of Acts. That's where I draw my foundation from. How do I interpret that? Well, my interpretation flows from the theology of Karl Barth, who is probably the most prolific theologian of the 21st century. He rejects inerrantism. He's an infallibilist, just like I am. And so the Bible, again, what is its purpose? Is the Bible authority? No, the final authority is the Spirit. And I don't know if I'm like completely boring the audience. I'm not paying attention to the.
I would. Well, here, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this to get really
like throw my hair around to something, make everybody laugh.
Do you believe in people being born with a sinful nature?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I don't hold to. I don't hold to the Augustinian original sin.
Okay. Do you believe there's a hell where people will go if they don't accept Jesus Christ as their Savior?
I will admit that I do not have a fully formed theological position on heaven and hell. I do believe that there is a heaven. I do believe there's a hell, but I honestly don't know what my positions are. That's something that I really, really go down and look into. But it always seems that what everybody wants me to do is defend the gays. Right? They're like, Kat, go in there. Like, look, they're beating up on the gays. Go tell them why Jesus loves the gays. And I'm like, all right. But I really need to get to this, right? So I honestly, like, I don't, I guess what I would say is I don't think there's many people in hell. I really don't.
Okay.
Because I believe that Jesus is going to approach every individual when they need to be approached to save them, right? So I'm not going to say that there's not people in hell. And for instance, you, Scholar, I believe you were once a Christian, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, no bones. You're still a Christian. You're going to heaven. What
about atheists? Can atheists go to heaven? If they were an atheist their whole life, could they go to heaven?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And anybody can go to heaven, right? That's the great thing about Jesus. Anybody can go. And we have no idea.
What do they have to do? Maybe I should ask that. What do they have to do to go to heaven?
I don't know what's in your heart, right? Only you can know what's in your heart. Only you
Sure.
can know what you actually believe or what you truly believe. You know, and I'll like talk about the desert island, right? If we've got two people on a desert island who've never been given the Bible, are they damned to hell for having been given a Bible? No.
Yes.
Of course not. That
Absolutely.
would be ridiculous.
Well,
I hear
they would
somebody
be
going,
called
absolutely.
Well, I think it's
called
just
innocents.
Well, the thing is, though,
No,
it sounds just as ridiculous to say that we need someone to die on a cross in order for anybody to go to heaven in the first place. Like,
But there
I
are-
mean, when you think about ridiculous sounding, like it doesn't, like that doesn't sound any better.
But they're
Well,
not all Christians
like,
think that you don't hear. Not all Christians think if you're not privy to the word, then you are not held accountable. You'd be considered what's called an innocent. In that.
Oh,
in
no,
that
I agree.
regard.
Yeah, but then like it just causes more problems, that kind of thinking. And then, like, why do we need to do any of this in the first place? Like, if they're going to be people who never hear his word in the first place and they get to go to heaven, why not just have everybody get to go to heaven if they didn't hear his word?
Yeah, it's like, why the hell did you
Right?
tell me
Like-
about Jesus? Now I'm screwed. You should have just kept your mouth shut.
Exactly.
Would have been fine.
Right?
You know?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Well,
Like at that point,
I would just like to throw this out, right? Is that I do have some answers, but I don't have all the answers. So I mean, I can't give you like everything.
Boy,
Like,
you're not
I
like
am
a
never.
apologist, are you?
Yeah,
right,
you're supposed
right.
to be, you're supposed to know everything. That's the job of an apologist. They all say we know everything. So
Well, I mean, I could make some shit up, but that would be rather
yeah,
dishonest.
we're used to that. Go for
Right.
it. Might be creative.
I mean, well, I mean, generally when I don't know something, I just kind of, squeeze my tits together and try to get out of it as best I can. So
It doesn't. I've heard the same thing. It doesn't work for
Let me
me.
ask a
I don't know why.
Let me ask a question.
I mean, if that would work for me, I'd have a bigger
Yeah.
following, probably. I guess.
This is something that that I was wondering, and there's an argument that some Christians use. I'm sure you've heard it. And it's not a pleasant by any means argument, and I just wonder how you would respond to this. The idea that the reason they say that it's an abomination or that it's not of God is because if you're somebody that's transgender, you're trying to become something that God did not intend you to be. That's the narrative that they put out there. Like if God wanted you to be a boy, you just to stay a boy. How do you respond in the light of that kind of questioning?
I would ask them if God intended for cancer to exist. If we are saying that God created this perfect world, and then fell, and because of that fall, all this crap started happening, why would we assume that the perfect stance continues to only apply to transgender people, right? Because we wouldn't hold the same standard to anything other than transgenderism. So it's extremely hypocritical to say that God intended for the world to be one way. It's obviously not. And we don't hold the rest of the world accountable for that failure, but we're definitely going to hold the transsexual accountable. And it's just pure hypocrisy on the part of evangelical conservative Christians to push a political agenda.
To me,
do you believe God made the world perfect?
I believe he made it good.
What does that
And then
mean?
we made it worse.
Yeah, so and actually I got some laughs from Skylar's fans when I said this, so we'll see how many laughs I get from this. So I believe that God made the world and he saw that it was good. He gave us, he created Adam and Eve, right? And I'm just using the story, right? And he created Adam and Eve and he said, look, I've given you this perfect world. There was no spiritual death. There was no physical death. We were all little vegetarians running around completely naked. And he said, like, all you got to do is not eat from this tree. And when we disobeyed that, we ate from this tree. And when we did that, sin entered the world. Disobedience to God entered the world for the first time. And that shattered the what God had created. And when that happened, this is when all these things came to be. So at best, the Christian apologist could argue that homosexuality and transgenderism is built to the fall. And if they want to take that position,
did you think that was all parable?
well, I'm kind of like referring to the traditional fundamentalist view when I say these things, right? If they want to hold to that view, they could be logically consistent up until they say, but this doesn't apply to trans people. And once they say that, well, now you're being inconsistent. Either it applies to everything or it applies to nothing.
But that, okay, what those people's opinions is kind of irrelevant in a sense. We'll say a non sequitur. All right, so like to the show, like we're talking about. There you go. I gotta do it. I gotta do it everyone. I gotta do it every show. So, but that's a non sequitur. There we go. But the thing is, though, I'm going to take your view, and your view is that God had made the world good at one point. What happened to when did it stop being good?
As soon as man sinned.
Okay. And what was that sin?
Disobedience to God. In whatever. I mean, I wasn't around. I don't know what the initial disobedience was.
Well, how do we know there was disobedience to God? How would we know there was any disobedience to him?
Well, I've been disobedient to God, so just the fact that I've been disobedient to God shows that there's disobedience, at least in
the Ten Commandments. The problem is you're referring to the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments didn't even exist at this point when you're talking about before in the beginning. So, like the first humans, how did they disobey God if everything was good? Like, what was the first disobeyment?
So, for instance, just because murder wasn't codified in the Ten Commandments yet doesn't mean murder would have been okay. Just because rape hadn't been codified. Yeah, right. So
there was death when everything was good.
Yeah, we can disobey against the will of God without being told what disobeying God is, right? Like there are certain things that I believe that we just have intrinsic to ourselves. Is that I think we're all basically born, since we're not born tabula rasa, I think we're all basically born with some inherent things about us. We kind of all don't need to be told that it's wrong to lie because we know it's wrong. We don't need to be told not to steal because we know it's wrong. We know it without anybody telling us it's wrong, and I think that's God imprinting himself on us.
The problem is with that kind of well, there's a couple things wrong. First, lying and stealing isn't always wrong. It's not always wrong to lie or steal. The second thing I would say is that if people were made good, why would a good person do something that's disobedient to God?
I don't know.
Seems like a contradiction. So like it seems like another situation. Like he knew we were going to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope I could consider myself a good person. Right? I hope people are a good person. I try to be a good person, but I fail. Right? I yell at my kids, and I speed. I cuss. I am
oh my goodness,
arrogant.
You're going to hell.
You know,
I don't want to confuse you.
Wow.
Let's not confuse you though with the original people. Like that's this tricky part, right? Because the Ten Commandments weren't here yet, and this is what I want to get to the real root of the issue. Like this is really the foundation of where you believe sin came into the world, but we don't have an understanding of why sin came into the world. We don't know what the disobedience was, right? So these concepts that you have in your head of disobedience and all that comes from a book that we can't tell if it's true or not.
I think if anyone were to say, I know exactly what the first thing is that someone did wrong, they're just lying through their teeth. I wasn't around 2 million years ago when humans came into existence. By the way, I'm watching the screen and these two guys that invited us to the show, they're just sitting there like...
Where are we at?
I'm not criticizing you for not knowing it.
Hang on, let me first of all, we pay attention intently. However, we have we're communicating with each other during these shows. We also have the live chat. We also have people messaging us. We're not ignoring you. Trust me. It's called multitasking.
No, you just look bored. That's all.
No.
Okay. For a long.
I have some
I've been
questions
wanting
for you,
to talk to you for a long time. just because
Yeah,
for me in that community, I'm interested in the line of thinking that because see, that's one of the reasons I got out of, because I grew
Right.
I grew up Christian until I was 25, and for someone to be in that same community that I am for the reasons that I got out, to stay in, but not only stay in, but to go out and actively witness for that is fascinating for me. So
Yeah,
I'm listening very intently.
So I'm
not.
going to
I'm not
look
even
up
part of the
something real quick.
because I'm not even part of the LBGQSP whatever. I'm perfectly cisgender straight, but even I left theism because of these issues, because
how
of 2008
boring of you.
when the church. So
How
I
boring,
found
right. You need
problems.
you need to start.
I'm
you
old,
need to jump
white.
on the bisexual route, mate.
I can't even get a girl. Why the hell would I want to fail with the guys too? Fuck that.
Now we have a bisexual apologist.
Oh, if you don't mind, actually, so I just like to read something real quick, and this is something that I read to a lot of people who have these questions, and this is just a real quick homily from Archbishop Metropolitan Ware, and he says persons of heterosexual origin have the option of getting married. In so a positive way, they can fulfill their erotic desires with the church's blessing through the God-given sacrament of holy matrimony. But homosexuals have no such option. In the words of Vasilios Thermos, a homosexual subject is called to lead a life of celibacy without a vocation for it. Are we right to impose this heavy burden on the homosexual? A homily is to be found in the way homosexuals are commonly treated in the sacrament of confession. All of us recognize an important distinction to be made between those homosexuals who engage in casual encounters seeking out in some gay bar a partner for a single night, and on the other hand, those homosexuals who are committed to a permanent relationship, faithful and monogamous, in which deep involved. Surely no Christian is in favor of sexual promiscuity. What happens by contrast to the faithful and monogamous homosexual? Perhaps the priest in confession will say, are you willing to give up this relationship? The penitent may answer, I do that. The priest may rejoin, can you continue to share a common life marked by mutual affection, but abstain from further sexual activity? The penitent may reply, I am not willing to undertake that. The priest, faced with this refusal, may well feel that he cannot bless the penitent to receive sacrament. Now here certainly is a paradox. The homosexual committed to a stable and loving relationship is treated more harshly than the homosexual who is casual and promiscuous, seeking not true love, but passing pleasure, something which has truly gone wrong. Why do we put so great an emphasis on genital sex? Why do we seek to inquire what adult persons of the same sex are doing in the privacy of their bedrooms? Trying to gaze through the keyhole is never a dignified posture. What harm are they doing to others? It will be said they are doing harm to themselves. I am not suggesting here that we should bluntly set aside the traditional Orthodox treatment, but we do need to inquire more rigorously into the lie behind it. In the words of Brandon Gelahar, to ask the truth, we must experiment. And as Vasilios Thermos, our theological treasury is waiting to be discovered. Let us not, as Orthodox, be merely passive and reactive, running after the facts, but let us listen with creative, mutual respect, and more than that, loving compassion. Let us acknowledge, moreover, the variety of paths and vocations God has called us as human beings to follow. And I think this is at the crux of the discussion about homosexuality in the church. Metropolitan Callistus Ware was... Yeah, go ahead.
Just to what
Absolutely.
you just said. Let me say something real quick to what you just said. He's right on one count. The way that you find truth is through experimentation, and experimenting is exactly how I found out I was gay. So he is correct on that one count.
I never had
Also,
an experiment. I
have
knew
no
wasn't.
issue whatsoever with passive
agree
pleasure.
with
I don't see an issue with passive pleasure. But here's what I think is going on, and the reason that churches now are becoming more liberal, or you're having a rise in liberal churches, it's not because they, for some reason, have come around on homosexual issues. It's not for a reason that they saw where they were wrong before. It's purely a numbers issue. because the fact that gays are widely accepted now than they ever have been before, the churches are using that as a way to increase membership. These acts like this are just a way to, number one, mirror what public, what the public reaction is. And so they're trying to appease that. And also, too, their numbers are dwindling. So they're trying to do everything they can to get those numbers back up. I don't, for me, feel that it's in any way genuine when they open their doors and welcome gay people with some of the things that are in the book. I think it's purely a numbers
Can
game.
I add something to that? Because I just had this discussion with a friend of mine who is in the LDS church, and he's still a member. I had that discussion with him with the numbers dwindling. The rate of the LDS has gone down from about 6 and 5% where it was about a decade or two ago to about 1.5%. It's the lowest increase of all time. So in other words, the rate of its growth is substantially lower than it used to be. Now he's telling me that they are now starting to try to do some more progressive approaches. And I think, like Kyle said, it is in direct response to the fact that they are getting huge amount of backlash for what happened in 2008 with Proposition 8, with the bishops asking about masturbatory habits of underage people and the Catholic Church and all these different things. I think that churches now, you might be right, that they are trying to figure out how to get people back in the pews, butts in the seat kind of thing, right? And they might be changing the I'm waiting for the Pope to come out and say, God has told me this, and make some big old announcement that something is majorly changed kind of thing, because I do see it is again, causation or correlation is implied causation, but it does provoke an argument to be had that they are changing things because religion is dwindling. That's just true, right?
Yeah, I think that the Pope needs to concentrate on pedophilia before he worries about gay people.
He's got
God.
probably good. Can I just to bring something back here a little bit with this? So, like, listen, obviously everybody in this room is very pro LGBTQ. Like, nobody in this room is going to be against it. Like this,
rainbow.
Listen, we all agree on this, right? But
women for me that I can't get, I'm cool with that.
Exactly.
You're married, so
You're definitely staying on the straight side, Steve. We're not taking you on our team. You're staying on that team.
I would make a bad gay person. Yeah, I would be very bad at it.
Go ahead, Skylar.
Well, what I do want to go into, like, let's take the parts of the Bible you do believe in. Let's take the Jesus stuff, right? And let me just show you how, like, Jesus basically lies to the people. Like, and I'll give you a couple scriptures just to show this, right? So if we look at Matthew 18, verses 19 through 20, he says, "Again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth about anything, and that you may ask, it shall be done. For my Father who is in heaven, for where 2 or 3 have gathered together in my name, I am there in their midst." Christians pray together all the time for things, and he does not grant those prayers. This is directly from Jesus, and there's more. He said this multiple times. This is Matthew.
Well, hold on. Let's just go
18.
at a time. Matthew 18 verses what?
19 through 20.
Okay. So this
I mean, there's a lot of verses with him saying he'll answer prayer.
Right. So this is dealing with sin in the church, right? So we need to go all the way back to 15. It said, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. And when he's talking about brothers and sisters here, he's talking about fellow Christians. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 witnesses. I.e., if one person's not good enough, take a couple other brothers with you.
Wait a minute, where did you go? They still refuse Matthew 15? Where'd you go to? Matthew 15?
I'm in Matthew 15.
So you went back a couple chapters.
Yeah.
So
well,
why would
just a couple verses? Well, because 15 through 20 are all one.
Well, it's not verses. It's different chapters. 18, I believe, is because I think the verses would be like 18, like when you go 1, 2.
You said
Matthew 18.
You said Matthew chapter 18 verses
19 through 20.
Right, and I'm saying that verses 18 and 19 and 20 must be read together with 15, 16, 17, and 18.
All right, let's see here. Dealing with, it's got 2 different things. So it's dealing with the sin in church, which is 15 through 19 here. Okay, I see what you're saying. Go ahead.
So if they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or tax collector. So this is basically Jesus saying, look, we need to confront sin in our church. We need to confronts. You do it individually, and then you do it with a group of people, and then you bring it before the church, and then if they still refuse to do it, you treat them as an unbeliever. This is not Jesus saying that these people don't have faith. It's just saying we need to treat it because we have no reason to accept that they do in fact believe this. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Now this is a verse that is understood as a great promise made by Christ, and is used in context with giving Peter the key, right, which is where it's repeated. And this is basically trying to giving a discussion about what is true and what is not true. It doesn't mean if I say this is what we're going to do, it doesn't mean it's bound in heaven, right? And then again, I truly tell you, if two or agree about anything they ask for, it will be done by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. So Jesus is saying wherever 2 or more Christians are gathered, right, in discussion, Jesus is there with us. And what they ask for, it will be done, Father in heaven. But this doesn't mean, right, that you can just, ask. You get a couple Christian rooms and say, "Oh God, we really heard of pink flamingos. Where's my herd of pink flamingos?" Right? That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the capacity of what is true and what is not true. To be able to decide what was actually said and what was not intended is what loosing and binding means.
So you're saying that when God says he'll answer any of these prayers, he's not really saying answer any of these prayers.
So Christians pray for a lot of things, right? I mean, how many people do we know say, God, man, I'd be all right if I could just have a sports car, right? I think God does answer prayers. But oftentimes,
honestly, question: How about things like not being raped, or how about like natural disasters? How about big picture things where people? I mean, even my friend, who I love a lot, we formed Christian Apologist, right? He used to be known as Christian Anarchist. He tweeted something the other day. He's like, I have a storm coming in. Please pray for me. And I love the guy, right? And I'm like, dude, I really want you to be safe, but I don't think prayer is going to make much of a difference, right? And I kid him all the time. But in some seriousness, what is the efficacy that you think if people do pray for certain things? I mean, do you think that God is going to change the path of a natural disaster? Because if there is any evidence of that, I personally myself have never seen anything like that.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's a hurricane. I think he could, but he won't. God gave us agency. God gave us will. God gave us the ability to make choice. The most loving thing that God could do for us is to never interfere with our ability to make a choice.
Well,
so when people say,
that's a natural disaster, right? I mean, you don't have much of a choice if you're living in the path of a hurricane.
Yeah, well,
I choose not to hit landfall.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world that has hurricanes
sickness,
and earthquakes and tornadoes and lightning strikes and Hannibal Lecter, right? And really
in the Bible they took away free
dudes.
choice. I mean, women had to get, when they killed all the men and they took the women to be their wives. That was a commandment against their will. That violated their agency. They didn't have any free will in that.
Yeah, and that was, and this is why I hate when people take like this inerrant position that the Bible has no contradiction, because that is contradicted by the Book of Corinthians. So we have a blatant contradiction between Old Testament and New Testament and how we're supposed to treat people. We have a blatant contradiction in the Book of Philemon on slavery contrasted with the Old Testament. We have a blatant contradiction with the way Jesus approaches certain things with the way it would have been done in the Old Testament, which is why he was killed. So this idea doesn't have contradictions. It's just a ridiculous position, and most Christians who hold to this literal interpretation of the Bible have to jump through so many hoops. I think the problem is that we as humans, obviously, we have limitations on what we can understand and rationalize. We try to take this creator, this transcendental creator, this larger than life being that exists outside of our reality, that is eternal, that is not material, and fit it into our pocket. And we say, and we're going to pull it out when we see something we don't like, and we're going to beat each other over the head with the Bible. But then when it's going, we're going to say, oh man, thank you. Right? And Jesus talks about that. He talks about those people. I would never proceed to fit God into a box. I refuse to do it. There's many aspects of God that I will never ever be able to understand, and I don't think that I have the ability to convince certain people. My hope in coming on to these shows, and mind you, I do hope I'm doing okay, but my goal is to present my view is to show an opposing view to fundamental evangelical Western Christianity. This view that says that, all this stuff is wrong and there's no room for any of these people. And if you don't follow this toe-to-toe, right? Because that's being an Israelite. Following the law, being legalistic, hacking everything down, that is being a Judaizer, for lack of a better word, right? And Jesus argued against all that.
Just FYI, just FYI. First of all, by the way, we are going to be wrapping this in 5 minutes, and I do have one question to ask you. But you have your favorite friend in the live chat right now. If you'd like to say hi to him, the vile, disgusting piece of crap that I want nothing to do with. He's under a
Mr. Batman! Hey,
yeah, I know all his
Jim, I missed you.
Yeah. Jim, good old Jim.
Who is it?
Christian Hillbilly.
It's Christian Hillbilly.
Jim Barber.
Fuck
not
you, Christian Hillbilly.
Yeah, he is a piece of shit.
Well,
and I will say that without reservation.
Well, so this
you are a piece of shit, Jim.
I will say this.
Eat a bag of dicks,
Jim. I will
Jim.
say this, right?
Eat a bag.
I will say this.
Yes.
We do have to. And I do want to take. I do want just like 30 seconds to do something. But before we get to that, I will say, in defense of Jim, right? He does literally have brain damage. Like, he has literal brain damage. So we can't necessarily. You have to treat him like one of the.
No. I can't accept that. He drove a bus for special needs students. You cannot be that brain damaged and drive a bus full of school kids. He got fired for that. And do you know why he lost his job for that? Do you know the story behind that? Because I'll be happy to tell you.
He was supposed to be riding in the back.
We don't need to do it on the air. Real quick, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind. I'm telling you.
I think he wants to.
He is vile.
I think he wants to.
I want to. You have to know why. This is true. The reason why was because a child, and I don't remember the exact age, but I'm somewhere around elementary school of some sort, had been sexually assaulted and raped, and he told that child that was that person exercising their free will.
Oh God,
that's how vile he is.
Oh,
that's the point where I said,
no.
I'm dead freaking serious. I know a lot about this guy, and that is exactly true. You can ask him; he'll tell you that story. He felt nothing wrong with saying that it was not only just the rapist exercising free will, but it was God's thing, and there's a plan involved.
What a disgusting.
You are a fucking piece of shit.
I've heard people like that will say, they'll go to people that have been domestically abused, and they'll say it was God's plan. So
I have animosity towards somebody like that. There are reasons. There are damn good reasons, and that to me is beyond reprehensible. So just FYI, I have very legit reasons why I think he's a piece of shit.
I know you guys are wanting to wind up, so if you don't mind, real quick, if you don't mind, I'd like to plug my own channel.
By all means, yeah, we got super chats to read. So finish up your thing, plug your channel, and then we'll read the super chats and call it a night. But I do have one question before you do your stick on your channel and stuff. Do you think God's a metaphysical necessity?
Do I think what?
God is a metaphysical necessity.
I think he is the necessary precondition. Yes.
That would make it.
But
okay, that would make it.
But yeah, I mean, I really, really try never to use presuppositional, semantical, proprietary language in my discussion because
that's not presup. That's modal. That's modal logic. If you're saying he's
I
a
believe
necessary thing, then he has to exist in all ontological modal realities, and therefore he's by necessity something that has to exist. Okay.
Yeah. And mind you, I say
precept.
that I do take issue with certain aspects of modal logic, but that's another conversation for another day.
Very well. All right. There you go. Wrap it up.
Yeah, you guys can always like have me back, and we can talk about trans things or logic or whatever. You know, this isn't the only thing that I do. But yeah, I have my own little channel. It's called Transgender Reality. I'm actually like known as the anti-trans tranny. I do take kind of a different position on certain things.
So many labels.
In this world we live in now, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense in this world.
You know what? I think it does actually. It makes sense. I like that. I guess.
But anyway, if you want to know what I think about trans issues and things like that, there's a few things on there. I don't put out a lot of content. I do need to go forward, but I really do appreciate you having me on, Skylar. It was wonderful to talk to you again. I do hope to get to come back on your show and maybe this one as well and have some conversations dealing with Christianity. And I do hope at least for your audience have kind of given expressed my positions adequately and given a different view that you don't have to hold to these dogmatic positions about Jesus, right? In my view, Jesus loves you just as you are. He wants what's best for you. He wants you to find love. He wants you to find union. And whether that's with another man or another woman or a transgender person, or whether that person is black or white, a Mexican, tall, short, fat, you know, he wants you to be happy. And so, you know, if you found that person, look, awesome, hold them tight. Jesus isn't going to hate you for it. He's not going to condemn you for it. Anyone who says otherwise can just flatly suck a dick.
Any rational person would take a million Christians like you than one like Jim Barber. I mean,
absolutely. Can I say too that I want to say it was a great conversation. I have a lot of respect for transgender reality. I would just go one step further than her and say, just go ahead and get rid of the whole Bible. You don't need it, right? I know, and here's the thing with religion. I know, listen, folks, I was a deist, and Christian is all the many things. What it was referred to earlier.
Agnostic. He was an atheist. He was a deist.
I'm agnostic, but I'm agnostic Muslim, towards God. I'm atheist towards the Christian religion. All right, that's really what I say. It's easier to say atheist, but here's the point, right? There's no point. There's no reason to believe the Bible. I get people out there. If you're a Christian, the world can be very scary, and like there's a lot of things that we don't know. Like when you appeal to these things, like your morals, you're just appealing to your own moral system. And it's okay, like to feel guilty when you do something, right? You do have a moral standard. Usually, it's probably sometimes you'll take other people's standards and apply it to you, or you're taught a standard. But the key is to be to critically think about these things. And I really suggest to all of you out there, just read the Bible. You want to become an atheist, you want to be someone who doesn't believe in Christianity, just simply read the Bible and you understand it. I appreciate everybody for having me on. I'm Skylar Fiction. If you ever want to check out my channel, I do the Skylar Fiction Show. Just type Skylar Fiction in YouTube. You see these wonderful guys come on there every once in a while. And we do conversations like this, especially transgender reality. We had a great conversation a couple weeks ago. But please, thank you, everybody. I appreciate Steve and Kyle for letting me come on here so often. You guys are very generous with your time. And yeah,
it was wonderful meeting you guys. It was absolutely wonderful. Really enjoyed it.
Try and make the world a better place. Here, by the way, on your channels, I will put Transgender Reality. Your channel will be in the description here in just a little bit, so that people, if you're watching, you can
Thank you so much.
Just click it from the link. Skylar, of course, everybody loves when Skylar's on, so we appreciate you both coming on. Steve, is there any super chats or questions relative to this show? Because what we're going to do, since we have so many super chats to get to, the ones that aren't or from last night, I don't think they, you don't have to stick around for that because you're sitting here while we go through all of these countless things. So we're going to say, go ahead.
There's 3 for tonight. Let's see here, or yeah, 3. Kyle Julius 311 $2. I can't spell. I don't know what this word means. And I'm an idiot. So AGALLOCH. Anybody know what that means? Is that German or something? I don't know what it. AGALLOCH. I don't know what that word means. And I'm too lazy to Google. I never Google shit. I'm just always too lazy to Google. But thank you for that. Actually, you know what? I'm now curious. What the hell does word mean? It means was it American? Oh, here we go. An American black metal band from Portland, Oregon, formed in 1995. Cool.
All right.
Oh, reference to St. Catherine's Head.
That's it. Oh, I got you. Oh, I get it now. See, good. That's good.
Yeah.
Cam Spires, $5. Would you go against your God if he judges gay or trans immoral?
Mm.
It's a fair question.
That's a very fair question. That's an extremely fair question.
Yes. It's reasonable to say yes.
I think I would probably have to say yeah. You know, I mean, I am trans. It's just an objective truth.
I respect that answer actually. I really do, because I mean, the thing is that even if there was a God that said something along the lines of, okay, this condition is immoral, and if there's an objective thing that you can't even change, then what kind of God is that? I mean, that's not the Christian God that people think of when they think of some kind of righteous, perfectly moral being. So whatever is saying something like that, I can't picture in my head that being what they're picturing as the Christian deity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morgan Myers. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Good. Morgan Myers, $5. This was a troll, but hey, $5 is $5, so fuck them. Educate your ignorant, biased, and hypocritical chat. Wikipedia, suicide among LGBT, Fred Knotts and Company, facts is greater than feelings, fragile little cupcakes.
Yeah, so that's like the transgender people commit suicide at like a 42% rate or something like that. It's talking about 2 independent studies, one from 1972 and one from like 10 years ago, that when you look at the methodology, you realize that it's all a bunch of crap. We don't know the suicide rate amongst the transgender community other than it's higher than the average society. And maybe if you stop treating transgender people like crap, we'd stop offing ourselves.
I mean, does that really surprise anybody? When you get trolls like that, is that really hard to understand why people would be? It has nothing to do with being fragile. I mean, for fuck's sake, people have breaking points. You know. And by the way, I wouldn't want to piss off anybody in this room. So I guarantee you, nobody in this room is a fragile little snowflake, because I wouldn't piss off any one of them, even me. Don't piss off me. But yeah, I've seen the other two go off. I know it can happen. Go ahead.
I think honestly what happens is that people look, they see me and they're like, Jesus Christ, that tranny is more attractive than any woman I'll ever sleep with. This sucks. I'm going to hate on her. That's what I think.
Sure enough. I've had some good looking women, but you'd be up there. I'll give you that. It's the hair.
There's a rule in which I live my life by, and that is very simple. Don't be a dick, suck a dick.
Yeah, right. I can get down with that. I can get
except
down
for those
with
2 years in college. Okay, I did. Like I said, I didn't need to experiment much. No, I'm just kidding. I just, to me, I don't know. I never was attracted to men. You're reading. Go ahead. Read the ones from Replacing Darwin's, and then I'll do the after show.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's it for tonight.
Okay, Skylar and Transgender Body, we're not going to make you sit through the super chats we're going to do, because we're going to be talking a lot about last night and what happened. We will send you off and say thank you for coming on, and we'd love to, of course, Scott will be back very soon, and Transgender Reality would love to have you back as well.
Anytime. It was absolutely wonderful. Yep. It was wonderful to meet you, Skylar. Great to see you again. And send me an email, subscribe to my channel. Bye.
Will do. Goodbye.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
By the way, just before we start, I want to take this opportunity to talk about a couple things we've got coming up next week. On Tuesday, look at the little Tuesday one. Jilly Juice from Dr. Phil. She had a cabbage juice that's supposed to regrow limbs and cure gayness, cancer cells, and all other kind of stuff. Make Steve exist again. It'll make you understand that the colors exist. All kind of. It's Tuesday at 8 p.m. Make sure you
It'll
check that
fuck
out.
with your brain.
Right.
It's a total mind fuck.
And pragmatic culture on the Catholic Church. Okay. Here we go. From Kent Hoven CPA. Doesn't say anything.
Yeah, it's just $1.
Says all-
Remember, he gives us $1 for every video that he likes.
Okay.
Two if it's really good.
From Secular Reasons, $2. Why didn't Dr. J answer the questions directly? That reason for that would be it's easier to of the other person is getting mine wrong than it is to answer or account for your position and then have to sit there and face the music. Wouldn't you agree with that, Steve?
Yes, very much so. But here's the thing. I noticed that, he kept going back to you haven't read the book, you haven't read the book. I know Dr. Mays has read the book because I've talked to Dr. Mays like constantly between when we set this up and we actually had the discussion. We were talking about things in the book, right? So I know he's read the book and everything he mentioned was in the book. Yet the first 20 minutes of the presentation that Dr. Jensen had isn't even in the book if you guys read the book. And so his whole shtick was basically saying it isn't in the book, but yes, it is in the book. But it's so complicated that when we try to suss out what it is he's trying to argue for, when it comes to coalescent theory, it's hard to press him to make a claim to say, this is what I'm claiming, this is what we see in the data, and therefore this. He doesn't do that.
But nonetheless, I commend him on agreeing to come on into the and staying.
Oh, absolutely.
That was. I mean, he knew. It was funny because when Arn came in and he introduced himself to Arn, he said, "I'm meaning to come out and meet you when you're here testing the Ark. I just hadn't got the chance yet." And I was like, "Oh man."
Yeah, that would have been kind of fun. Hey, real quick, they say you're breaking up again. Is there something you can reset real quick? Because I just asked them if it's both of us, and they just said it to you. There's a lot of dropouts.
Let me try.
They're.
Let me try cutting that out.
Kyle EXE is Kyle EXE stopped responding.
What about now?
That sounded good.
Okay. I had to turn that other thing off. Okay. From Jamie Sislow, $50. Thank you, Jamie. Dr. Jensen, sir, saying, "Show me where it says that in my book," is like a corporation being sued. Says to the plaintiff, "Show me where it says that in my terms of service." Nobody reads the terms of service. It's just dishonest.
That's a good quote, by the way. I like that,
yeah.
Jamie. And by the way, your audio sounds perfect now. So whatever you did, that worked.
Yeah, I had. I'm trying to download I'm a beta tester for Apple, and I'm downloading the newest release of iOS 12, and it's a 3 gigabyte package, so it was probably pulling from.
Yeah, it was because your audio's whatever you did, it fixed it, or at least a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Sweet.
It's
okay. We know that
pull
now.
from the. No. Okay. From Bram SLI1. Simply because it's an honor to be in the chat with Arn Ra. Damn, this channel is porn for the mind. That's the greatest compliment ever.
Yeah, that's actually pretty awesome.
Jade Dragon Melly says, "This is an infomercial to read his book." Is this an infomercial to read his book? No, and I honestly don't have a problem with him plugging his book because that's the entire reason the debate was brought on. Like, I don't mind people on the show. We don't pay guests that we have come on the show, so the least we could do is give them the opportunity to, plug whatever it is. I don't have an issue with that so much.
None whatsoever. And by the way, as a biology book, if you just take like the first half of it, it's good. I mean, it's nothing wrong with the biology in it. I mean, he's a PhD from Harvard, for Pete's sake. I didn't find anything wrong with it, and I'm not an expert by any means, of course, but I'm a layperson who knows a little bit. It was a good read. Dr. Mays found nothing wrong. It was only when it came to the phylogenetics and the what's called coalescent theory that he's actually saying why are you looking at this data set for the mitochondrial DNA, and you're ignoring the fact that that's predicated from other things that have to do with the nuclear DNA? And the nuclear DNA we know goes back much, much, much further. And he just kind of just doesn't deal with that. And he just focuses on the mitochondrial DNA that nobody bothers with. I mean, that doesn't tell you anything from the way I know about it. It doesn't really tell us much except for the fact that we know that mitochondrial DNA goes back to mitochondrial Eve, but that was like 200,000 years ago, right? I mean, so that kind of shits all over young Earth creationism right there, don't you think?
I would agree.
Okay.
Puffalophagus says, or do you want to say that name, Steve?
Puffalophagus.
Dr. Mays is like a
brother.
science pit bull. I agree.
He is.
Ruhif, $80 from Ruhif. Thank you, Ruhif. That was
Australian. That's like 5,000 American. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually like $50.
Oh, it's got a dollar symbol beside it. I don't know the.
It's Australian, yeah. But thank you.
It doesn't say Australian.
Absolutely. A is Australian.
I didn't notice the A, Steve. I just noticed the dollar symbol. Okay, I'll show you. Get your own symbol for money, Australia.
Damn you, Australians.
Okay, it says, wow, massive dodge. Bring me Tompkins. Got a bail. We'll try to join the after show in a few hours. Thank you, Ruhif. Shane, Steve, I never get tired of seeing you and that blank stare you have when a creationist is in the show. He has that blank expression a lot more than just when creationists are in the show.
Yeah, why do you think it's just for when I have creationists on the show? I kind of, that's my resting face. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Resting base level face. That was
exactly
the next super
my
chat.
base
That
level
wasn't
face.
me. And the last one for $38.99 Australian dollars. Australia, get your own symbol. Nice one, Herman.
Okay. And the ones from the after show, here we go. Sandring, $50, American. Yeah, go American. Thank you, Sandring. You know, we don't care if it's American, Australian. It all converts the same. We do appreciate it. $50, anything we appreciate. It is like Hollywood Squares of awesomeness. And I loved that one so much that I actually took a screenshot of the Hollywood Square layout and that super chat, and I actually put it on my Facebook, by the way. So I really liked that one.
It was cool. We had a lot of big swinging dicks of science in there.
It was awesome, and it was fun. It was really fun, and Arn had a great time. He was talking about it afterwards, and I know Apologia had a good time. He had commented on a couple different posts that he really had a good time. It was fun. The Prophet of Cthulhu, $5. What is Dr. Jeanson's opinion on human chromosome number 2 fusion? That's a great question because I actually talked to Dr. Jeanson about this after the show, and I actually talked about him on Facebook about a month ago. Tried to talk to him about it. I don't think he really has an opinion on it. He seems to default to Dr. Tompkins. Yes, it is on page 240 or 284. He mentions it tangentially. He basically says something along the lines of he mentions the fusion, but he just says the citation, right? He doesn't give any reasons to say why Dr. Tompkins is right. And we've reached out to Dr. Tompkins. He knows us. Trust me. He knows Ruhif very well. As a matter of fact, Dr. Jeanson knows Ruhif. But Dr. Tompkins just merely basically asserts that there's a gene that exists on human chromosome number 2 that goes across this fusion where you have a telomeric fusion of a head-to-head alignment. And we can actually see by looking at the nucleotide sequence that it is a fusion. So in other words, we have one chromosome that relates to 2 other chromosomes called pan-troglodyte 12 and 13. And if you take pan-troglodyte 12 and 13 and you just go like this and put them together like this, guess what? That's human chromosome number 2. So there's a relationship there. So I don't think that he really wants to say one way or another, because I think even he realizes that's really, I hate the word evidence because there's reasons, but it's definitely what we would expect if we are related to all other members of Homodia, which is the great apes. So is that a long answer for basically he doesn't have a position on it? Brown Coat G, $10 Australian. So basically what I'm taking away from this is that the creationist scientists, cough, cough, want participation medals for sharing bad ideas. Seems legit.
I think they're just trying to advance their narrative, and that's to be expected. I don't think that I don't see. I mean, there's nothing else you would expect if they're a part of an organization that big and it has that many people that follow into it and donate to it. Then I think they're expected in certain ways to try to put forth proof of their stance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. There's two actually more on this particular video real quick. The Goddess Island, I had to refresh. Goddess Island, he says for $2, boycott and don't support non-sequitur in big large letters. And then he told me, you see the irony. Yeah, we get that. Thank you.
Why boycott us?
Because he's Goddess Iwan. He's full of irony and he thinks he's funny because he's Goddess Iwan.
I would boycott us
and he's
too,
not
though,
feeling
to
well.
be honest.
Yeah, it's a non-sequitur, right? That he gives us money to say don't support us. But by the way, Goddess Iwan and Miss Snarky, feel better. I know you guys have been sick. Dakota Johnson also said, so Skylar, are you an atheist this week? Would love to see Steve try to flip his beard. I don't have a long enough beard to flip as a goatee, that's why. Now, Skylar is weird when he goes from agnostic to atheist depending on the week, so whatever. So what else we got here? 01321326666. He loves that 666. Many flat earthers say they believe Earth is flat because they take the Bible literally. How can non-literalists differentiate flat Earth from young Earth creation adherents? I have no idea. I've been asking the same question forever. Kyle, how do they? I mean, to me, if you're going to be a literalist, you should be probably a flat earther. How can literalists differentiate flat Earth from young Earth adherents? Because if you're going to be a true Bible literalist,
I think there's a difference because it doesn't actually say the Earth is flat in the Bible. It just says the four corners of the Earth. And I think that whoever was writing that at the time, I mean, when you're back then, that's all you're going to see. It would be ridiculous for somebody to think that they would actually believe the Earth is round back then, because there was no way to prove that. So you're just going by what you see when you look out and look at the planet. You can only see.
I don't fault them for thinking that at all. I don't fault them for thinking the Earth is flat. Okay, Sandring, another $50, by the way. Okay, this demands another Hollywood Square of awesomeness. Thank you, Sandring.
You have too much money to spend with Sandring. We need to come party with you.
Yeah, dude. You know what? I just buy me a beer and we'll just kick it, dude. Because I can't afford beer. Let's see. Iso Lycan. Yeah, Iso Lycan. Yeah, okay, I know him. $2 with all the homos being thrown around, demonetized. That was like from last night. We were talking about Homo sapien, homo ladies, those kind of homos. So don't get all your panties in an uproar, people.
If homos got you demonetized, then every video we had would be demonetized because there's a homo in every video.
But dude, you put homo in the title and you're likely to get demonetized. So
that's
weird.
That's
gayist.
That's gayist.
It's gayism, isn't it? Yeah, I agree. Mexican Wrath, $5. Trevor, quote, the beard, Vale. Is it Vale or Valley? It's Vale, right?
Valley.
Vale. Valley? Is
Valley.
it Valley? Okay, Trevor Valley wiped the floor with the nose picker. Yeah, he did. Trevor's badass, man. Trevor's badass.
He really is.
AC
He'll be back in
Castillo,
October, guys.
Which and what topic? I don't remember. Refresh my memory.
We're still saying that. I've got to send him an idea. I've got a guy that thinks that all dinosaurs.
I know he's coming back.
I have a guy that thinks that all dinosaurs have had feathers at one point, like all of them. And Trevor doesn't really subscribe to that, so there might be a debate on whether or not dinosaurs had feathers.
There are non-avian dinosaurs.
Yeah, but I think that what they're saying is that even like the T-Rex had feathers.
Oh,
they were feathered animals.
AC Castillo, $2. Keep talking and take my money, heathens, and we will.
Okay.
What do you want to talk about? Prophet Cthulhu, $15. Hey, Trevor, have you heard of the video game Sonarin? It's a survival game, simulation game that takes place in Hell's Creek Formation. If you have, how accurate are the dinosaurs and ecosystems design? Unfortunately, Trevor's not with us, but maybe we can get that question to him for Prophet Cthulhu.
We will ask him that next time he's on.
There you go. Thrift Store Dan, $5. Hats off to Non Sequitur. This evening has been delightful.
Keep your hats on, because
me.
if you're wearing a hat, that means you didn't do your hair. So we would just appreciate if you kept your hats on.
Unless it's a fedora, you can wear fedoras. They're cool.
If it's a fedora, tip it.
Sandra, yeah, you got to. I don't remember the symbology. Is that's an atheist thing, right?
Yeah, that's an atheist thing.
I see. I'm not. They don't tell me these things, right? The atheists keep
because you're not an atheist from me. Remember?
I know, that's why they don't keep their secrets. I mean, they don't tell me everything. I'm not like a true member of the club. Sandring, $20 more. By the way, Kyle is a theist because of Romans 1, and he's just denying God in his unrighteousness. I have $20 to challenge. I have $20 to challenge Aaron to a debate where I claim he is wrong about absolutely everything, and I can spend all day failing to prove it to everyone's satisfaction. It would be fun. I don't know what that would entail, but going against Aaron, I gotta admit, anybody who goes against Aaron, you gotta have balls. I will give you that. I mean, I've gone against Aaron many, many times. We don't agree on a few things, and it has gotten brutal, knockout, drag out. But so has he and other people, with like Matt Dillahunty and other people. Just because you disagree with somebody, it could be a knockout, drag out fight. That's awesome. I mean, you have to have balls for that. But at the end of the day, I adore Aaron, right? I mean, and I know Aaron has this weird respect for me. So if you want to debate him, you got to know your shit if you go against Aaron, straight up. And he will have changed his position, but it's slow and methodical, I assure you. But he has changed his position before. Mexican's Wrath, $5 more. This kid says the universe is 6,000 years old and then proceeds to talk about the Cambrian period. Enough said. I caught that as well, by the way. That was weird when somebody says that, hey, the Cambrian explosion. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say we shouldn't have, like, when he said I am not like an expert on these opinions, or I don't have my, I don't know everything in these positions, yet he's making claims like he does, like he's talking and making sentences like he knows what the science is, or like he knows what the evidence is, but then he'll tell you that, well, I don't have the answers there, you need to go check this out. All he's doing is just accepting a position that he thinks sounds good at the time, but without checking it out. So I mean,
exactly what he's doing. Yeah, that's parroting. That's what I call parroting. Look at most of us, and I can't say always, but most of us, when we talk about a particular subject or we say something, we at least have some understanding of it. I mean, because if somebody's asked you, can you explain that? You should be able to explain it. Now, that doesn't always happen. Let's be realistic. But for example, I think somebody had mentioned it. I don't remember who it was, because I don't know if it was Christian or one of the other guys. Maybe it was, I think it may have been Dave McGinnis. But somebody had brought up polonium halos, right? And I'm sorry we didn't go down that route, because if you guys go to my channel, Steve McRae, there's a video on there about polonium halos that I did. I did a 2-hour PowerPoint presentation that I explained why Gentry was wrong. And I don't do that often. I don't do response videos. But that was one subject I do know a little bit about. And so I did a full presentation on why the polonium halos are they're not a good argument for creationism. But so when somebody says, hey, Steve, polonium halos, and then I ask them, well, what's your evidence for it? And they just say, hey, go read this by Gentry. Why bother? Because I have read Gentry stuff, and I have refuted it ad nauseum. So have other people, right? Because if you're just going to say, hey, this other person has said this, and I don't want to have a conversation with you, I have a conversation with Gentry, but Gentry won't do these things. So anyways, Darth Alpha the Great, $3 Canadian. Richard Dawkins is a doctor of philosophy. No, he's a doctor of biology, but all PhDs are doctorate of philosophies. They're of philosophy, not in philosophy. There's a difference. Right? Question in the live chat. I'm going to throw it in here. Why not? When did Kyle realize he was homosexual? Probably when he sucked his first dick, I'm guessing. I don't know.
When did I realize? Yeah, that would be the funny answer. Thank you for stealing that for me, Steve. I would say
I gotta get one
I would say early on. I remember probably my most vivid memory is would be in middle school, and my guy friends in class were all talking about who they were wanting to ask to. We would have these dances like once a month, and I remember being at a cafeteria table eating that square pizza that you used to get at school. The square frozen.
Yeah, dude, that wasn't pizza. I don't know what the hell that was.
It was pizza day, because they always had pizza and corn. You had and applesauce. It was pizza, corn, and applesauce, and it was all disgusting. Yeah. But I remember being at that table, and my friend Ben was talking about who he was going to ask to the dance, and I remember having the same thought, but my thought was I would want to ask another guy, a fellow classmate that I don't know if I'd say that I had a crush on him, but I felt differently about him, different towards. And I think it connected when he said, "Oh, I'm going to ask such and such to the dance," which was a girl. I didn't have that thought. Mine went to this other person. So I think that's the most, that's the earliest recollection I can remember that I knew something was different.
No, that totally makes sense. Mexican Wrath, $2 more. Hashtag Team Cunt. I don't remember what that was for, but thank you.
That was from the Awake Souls thing. Red Rhetoric and
that's Red's Rhetoric, yeah.
Oh, Awake Souls. Oh, real quick, you might want to mention what's going down tomorrow?
Oh, I'm going to before we close.
Okay. AC Castillo, $5. I appreciate your work and suffering. I think he's probably talking to somebody else in the hangout from last night, but hopefully to everybody. A lot of people, everybody in that hangout puts forth a lot of effort to get information out. I was blown away from that hangout the other night. How much just knowledge was in that hangout, and how much that group has added to the collective thing on YouTube that have swayed people and changed their position. That's just, it's weird when you get a message saying, I believe this, and now I believe this because of you guys. I mean, it's humbling. It really freaking is.
A lot of legends in that hangout, and in the live chat yesterday. I was looking at the live chat during the debate. I mean, you had Aaron, Bill Ludlow, John Perry, Paul's. I mean, you had all of those guys in the live chat too, commenting back and forth. And I was like, how weird is it to have like Aaron in here making comments about a video? Because Aaron's the guy that is responsible for taking me out of religion. It was an Aaron video that woke me up. So it's weird to be in a position now where he's in, my live chat talking about a video that we're doing, and he was the one, like, I up to him to now. It's very surreal.
Aaron didn't really change my position on anything, but Aaron's foundational falsehoods of creationism was my go-to back when, right? I mean, I think that was one of the greatest series there is when it comes to debunking creationism. That was my gateway to watching more videos, I think. Does that make sense? So, I mean, he didn't change my position because I was anti-creationism, but those videos are just amazing. I mean, he just nailed it. So
changed mine. He's the reason that we're doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I know he had a major effect on you. Sandring, $20 again. Trevor, what gun are you cleaning? I don't know what gun he had. He didn't show it. I'm glad he didn't. I don't want accidents to happen. But that was funny. He was cleaning a gun last night. And that was all the super chats we caught up. Whew, man.
Cool. All right. So guys, thank you for sticking with us. Nearly 180 people just read the live chat. That's wild. So thank you for sticking. Tomorrow, big night. Let's see if his last record that he was on here, 1,300. That's going to be against the Southern Israelite. I don't know what a Southern Israelite is. Nonetheless, there is one, and he will be facing Red's Rhetoric tomorrow on the Flat Earth. So, for you people who do not like Flat Earth, we have given you a month off of Flat Earth, and Steve and I need our Flat Earth fix. And that's going to take place tomorrow night at 9. We will be going at 9 o'clock. It will not be 8 like usual. We will be starting at 9. Until then, get a pizza and put pineapple on it if you're a communist. Good night.
Good night.
Non sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.